Okay, so the previous presentation we took a look at how we can generate events from the reducer and feed them and map them to the properties in a component. We want to go the other way around, and so that we can go full circle. We would like to be able to map events, right? Where the component would generate events and cause the reducer to calculate what the next stage should be. Right. So first, let's start with some really simple events such as clicking, and we'll see how we can handle them in the reducer. So let's generate a little button in the hello component that is going to invoke a handle click over here. So let's do that. Let's grab the on click on the down at the component level, right? And so we'll probably need to wrap this in a div. And then here's a button. Okay. Let's see what else. On click is going to handle click. Actually, we don't even need this, right? You can just have that, and then this is going to be a property that's going to be sent over to us. Somebody's going to pass us the event handler, right? Because we're not going to handle it. Right? We have no way of maintaining any state or changing something internally to us. Right? Everything has to be notified to some centralized state machine that handles all these events and then transitions the application from the current state to the next state. Okay. What's wrong? Oh, okay. We need to actually put a click. All right. All right. There we go. All right. So now we have the component generating the events, right, and notifying us through this property. The property is called handle click. Somebody is going to have to map that function, that property, down to an actual function that needs to be handled by the reducer. The reducer somehow is going to have to be notified. Hey, this button was clicked. Tell me the new state. Right. So just like we mapped states to component properties, now we have to map event properties. This is an event property, a property that is some function that's going to generate some event, mapped to an event handler in the reducer, right? So let's do that. Right. So here's where it's going to be handled in the reducer. Here's the reducer. Somehow the reducer is going to receive an action. Right? The reducer that we created earlier was a really dumb reducer. It wasn't actually calculating anything. It was always returning the same state, right? Hello equals world, right? In this case, we're going to make it just a little more nuanced. The function that we use, we weren't even taking any arguments in the function that we were using, right? So actually, it can take two arguments. It can take the current state, right? What is the current state, and some action. Right? And with those two things, it should be able to calculate what the next state should be. Right? The state in this case, we're not going to do anything with it. The arguments need to be, have to be written in this way. So let's go to the reducer. Here it is. I'll replace that. And basically what it is that it can be implemented different ways, but the result always has to come back with some JSON object. The response needs to be some JSON object which will represent the new state of the application. In this case, we're looking at the action, and depending on the action, we're going to return one JSON object or a different JSON object. Okay? The way that we're going to be deciding what to do is based on the action.type. Right? So action needs to be some object, and the object can contain anything. It doesn't matter what it contains. It's up to us what we put in the action, but it has to have at least a type attribute, right? And the type should be some token that has some meaning to us, right? We added a widget, we removed a user, we logged in, we whatever, some token that has some meaning to us, right? And that meaning translate on deciding whether we're going to return this state or that other state, right? Now the action can contain other things. That other thing could be all sorts of attributes and parameters and other business logic that we could pass around that could help us to determine what that next state should be. Right? In this case, we're going to ignore anything else that is in the state. We're just going to only look at the type. Right? But later on, we're going to pass all sorts of other things in the action, right, that will allow us to better create better states. Okay? So notice that this switch statement says, if the token is a click, then the message is going to be click, right? If it's not click, then it's just going to be world. So by default, the message is always going to be world, unless you click on the button. Right? If you click on the button, then it should be a click. So okay, that's the so we have these two sides, right? The reducer is handling this action, and the component is generating the event, right? So how do they communicate? So somebody has to map, right, and has to pass that action with that type equal to click. Somebody has to do that, right? So let's see how that happens. Yeah, it'll be default, right? And again, it could be a simple if, and then an object at the bottom, so some two returns, right? One inside of an if statement, and then another one at the bottom, which will be the default if the if is false, right? So you can put any logic in there you want, right? As long as you are returning, right, a JSON object that represents the next state. We're using a switch statement. It's the simplest. Yeah, the switch, right? The switch is looking at the action. If the type is if it's click, it'll return one JSON object. If it's not click, if it's anything other than click, it'll return the other JSON object, right? Right? There's no other cases here. It can only be one or the other in this case, right? Switch is the most common. Right? This is our little state machine. Right? This is going to be our little state machine, where the edges of the state machine are the action.type, yes, and then the JSON that are being returned are the different bubbles in the nodes in the state machine. Yes? Right? Okay. Excellent. So let's see how we connect these two. Action and dispatchers. Right. Yeah, so what's going to happen here is that the component, the component is going to generate events. It's going to generate events. And with the just like there was a mapper that mapped state to properties, we're going to have a mapper that maps event properties to the to actions that are going to be sent over to the reducer, right? And the ones who does that mapping, right? They are called dispatchers, right? That's the jargon, dispatchers. Also because the function that actually does the mapping between the two is called dispatch, right? Just like there's connect, there's also dispatch. Right, so let's do that. So inside of the container, right next to the mapper, the state to property mapper, we're going to put another mapper. Right? But this mapper is handling events. Okay? This is going to say, hey, you know that function, that property that the component is generating in the handle click, right? That property that's in the property of the component. Well, that's going to be somebody's going to be calling that function, right? I'm going to map it to this call. Right, it's going to call dispatch. Dispatch is the one who's going to actually call the function in the reducer and going to pass the action to the reducer. Okay. So let's do that. Let's copy that. So in the container right above or below, it doesn't matter, to the state to property mapper, it's a, there we go. It's a JSON object. Notice that it's a map. Or these are all maps, right? These are all JSON maps, right? The property value, it's just a map. Right? It's an object map. This one is also a map. And it says it's a map right here, and it says the handle click, which is the name of the property of the component, I'm going to map it to this dispatch function. This dispatch function is the one responsible for actually passing the action object to the reducer. Right? And this gives us a chance to massage the message before sending it over to the reducer. Just like the mapper in the state to property mapper allows us to massage the state before sending it to the property in the component, this one is the other way around. Right? Allows us to massage the data before sending it to the reducer. Right? Maybe aggregate some data, massage it before sending it to the reducer that will calculate the next state. Right? So notice that what it's sending, the dispatch, it's sending as an argument an object. This is the action object. This is the action object. Right? The action object, remember, the reducer is looking, the switch statement is looking at action.type. That's the type. There it is. We could pass other things if we want, right? We could, any arguments that the handle click. So the handle click could pass all sorts of other arguments in here. Yes, those arguments. Those arguments would be available right here, because it's a function, and whatever value gets passed in here, I could pass here. So I could have the component pass me stuff, additional information that I could then send it to the reducer, for the reducer then to decide whatever to do to generate the next state. We're not going to do that just now, not just yet. Let's keep it simple. Right? So this dispatch is going to send the action object. And remember how I told you that the connect takes two arguments? Right, the first argument is the property mapper, and the second one is the event mapper. So dispatch to property mapper as an attribute. Okay? Maybe make this a little readable. All right. Let's see. What else? Parameters. Okay, so let's see if we broke this. Our button, what happened to our button? Oh, there it is. So if we click on click, notice that it changes to click. Trivial. Everybody still with me? All right, awesome. All right, so let's play around with parameterizing, like passing things along, right, from the component and feeding it through the action, and then the reducer using that data to then calculate the next state. So let's do that.